The most underrated transfer in Texas A&M's transfer portal class is Cashius Howell.
You are Locked On Aggies, your daily podcast on the Texas A&M Aggies. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on in to Locked On Aggies. I'm your host, Andrew Stefaniak. Thanks for making Locked On Aggies your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today and you'll get $150 in bonus bets. If your first bet of $5 or more wins, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Ladies and gentlemen, we have some fun topics throughout the rest of the week. Lots of important things to discuss. But today, we've talked about the transfer portal players I'm excited about. I'm high on. Nick Scorton, Des Ricks. We've run through all these names, discussed all of these players. But what we haven't talked about is some guys that I think are a little bit underrated in this class for Texas A&M. Guys that maybe aren't the top end of the transfer portal class, but could see a role and are underrated. And for me, the number one name on that list would be Cashius Howell. I'm going to be honest with you. You can't deny 9.5 sacks. I don't care where you do it. I don't care if it's for the mean machine from the longest yard. Don't care who you do it for. If you get 9.5 sacks, we will take you here at Texas A&M. And that is what Cashius Howell did at Bowling Green a season ago. 6'4", 235 pounds, 27 total tackles, 9.5 sacks, and a forced fumble. And what stood out to me a lot, the reason, there's two guys on this list. I have 4 names. Well, I have 5. I have 4 names that are the main names that I'm going to talk about. And 2 of those names are because I really like the tape. One of those names is because I think that they were kind of used improperly at their previous school, and they could, if used right, can be a great player. And then the last guy I have is kind of like because of all the different things they can do. Those are the reasons for these 4 names I have here. And for Cashius Howell, his reason is the tape. I absolutely love the tape on him and when it comes to his sacks. And I've talked about it. It's when I watch tape on a player, I never like to see a one-dimensional football player. I never want to see somebody, if you are a corner, I don't want to see a corner who, they are great at jumping routes, but then they can't defend everything else. So you don't want to see a running back that has speed, but maybe isn't shifty and maybe can't catch pass. I like football players that can do everything that you could possibly need them to do. That is the type of football player I like. And that is the player that Cashius Howell is when it comes to him on the field. I think he is a really, really good pass rusher. I think he's a natural pass rusher. And I think what stands out about his pass rushing ability is the different moves that he has. We've all seen the pass rusher that has the one move. Maybe it's the spin move. Maybe it's the push-pull. Maybe it's a bull rush. Maybe it's some kind of other move, right? I think with Cashius Howell, what stood out to me was that he can beat you in so many different ways. I saw him get a sack with multiple different, pass rush moves. And, I always give the comparison when I talk about this to a big man down low in basketball. You don't want to have one post move. You don't want your post move to always be, you spin to the right and try and lay it in. You want to be able to spin to the left. You want to be able to do a step back, little tiny fadeaway jumper. You want to be able to spin into a dunk. You want to be able to do different things down low in the post. And that is same thing when we're talking about a pass rusher. So Cashius Howell is the guy who I think has all the moves necessary to be a really good pass rusher in the SEC. So, and I think that, listen, of course, he's not going to be, I don't think he's going to start or anything, but I think that you could see him come off the bench. He's going to play. He's going to sub in, and I think you could see him play. Get 4 or 5 sacks for Texas A&M next year. And if I could guarantee you if I told you this reserve is going to get 5 sacks, I think everybody here would take that. And that's kind of, I think, the spot we're in with Cashius Howell. He's going to be a really good player. So he's my number 1 most underrated player. Number 2 is the linebacker from Youngstown State, Alex Howard. I think this guy could start with York. I think he could. The numbers last year, Youngstown State, 67 total tackles, 1.5 sacks, 1 interception, 6'2", 230 pounds, really good height and weight to compete in the SEC. He's a guy that I think him and Cashius Howell, you could have a real good debate back and forth on who's the most underrated player, portal player. But I like Howard a ton. I do think you see him on the field this year. I just think he is really, really talented. And I think you're going to see him out there. And he's the other guy that it's film. Those are my 2 film guys, are Howell and Howard. And that's why, because, you watch the film and you go, okay, these guys are SEC football ready. These guys can play ball. It's very, very simple to see. And that's what they got going for them. So Alex Howard, I would not at all be surprised to see him sneak into a starting role. And I can guarantee you that you will see him out there in some capacity. So I'm excited to see what Howard's role looks like, but I promise you he's going to have one. The next guy I have here, and we've talked a little bit about this, but is E.J. Smith, the running back from Stanford. I think E.J. Smith is a guy who is, I talked to the new host of Locked On College Football, Spencer McLaughlin, who used to host Locked On Pac-12. And he told me that he really likes Smith. He thinks he's a player that was used poorly by Stanford and that in the correct role, he can succeed. So, and I watched the film. The film, it wasn't as good as these 2 guys, but it did, you could see the flashes of, oh, wow, okay. I get what he's saying. If you use him in this way or this way, I think he could really have a good year and have a good role for this Texas A&M football team. So I like E.J. Smith. And this is what Spencer told me. He said, listen, he is not going to get buried in the depth chart, which I'll tell you, that'll be interesting because, goodness, Texas A&M has a handful of really, really good running backs that are going to make it hard for anybody. Any of these guys. Someone's going to get buried, I think. I think you're going to see 3 guys. And could it be Smith? Could it be someone else? It's going to be really, really interesting. But I think maybe in the correct role, the 6', 210 running back from Stanford. He had 53 carries for 218 yards and a touchdown last year, 33 receptions for 242 yards. So he can catch passes. He can run the football. He can do it all. I think the more I watch the film and talk to people, I think you're going to see him on the field in some capacity this season. Then the last guy I got here is Rodas Johnson, the defensive lineman from Wisconsin, 6'2", 295 pounds. He had 18 tackles and a half sack last season for the Badgers. The reason I like Johnson as an underrated player in this transfer portal class is because he can play so many different positions across the defensive line. He can do whatever you need him to do, and that is why I like him. I think he's a guy who can really do it all. He can be all over the field. He can find ways to help you at different positions. And I like that because he adds, depth all over the defensive line. Do I think he's a starter? Of course not. But I think he's a guy that if someone were to go down with an injury, can come in and play, and he's played Power 5 football before. So I like Rodas Johnson just in that reason, just for that reasoning. So do I think he has this huge, massive role? No, but I think he adds depth all across the defensive line, makes this defensive line room better as a whole, and just flat out helps this football team get a lot better. So those are my 4 underrated transfer portal class players. As I said, I've talked about Nick Scorton, and we've talked about Des Ricks and all those players. You know how high I am on them. But these guys are underrated and make this football team so much better. And I can't wait to see them next year playing for Texas A&M. Our friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook, who we're getting ready to talk about, set their projected win total line for Texas A&M at 8.5. Let's make the case for the over. Let's make the case for the over, or make the case for the under, and talk about what this means big picture for Mike Elko's tenure. We'll have that conversation coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. But first, I want to tell you about our wonderful friends over at FanDuel. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. As I've been saying, ladies and gentlemen, the NFL is over, which means we are at an interesting point in sports, the sports world. Of course, Super Bowl's gone, college football's gone. You got NBA, March Madness is coming up, and baseball starts soon. As y'all know, I am a huge baseball guy. Love baseball, so I can't wait for that. Pitchers and catchers, I believe, for some play. I know that they reported today for some teams for spring training, so that's fair. I mean, it's almost here. The wait is almost over, and I can't wait. So you can bet on all of your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and a ton more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. So let's get into this win total. This was an interesting one. I'm not going to lie to you. If you would have asked me and you said, Andrew, what do you think Texas A&M's win total is going to be listed at? I would have told you 7.5. Now, reason I would have told you that is because I think, and I would have hammered that over, 8.5 makes it very, very, very hard to bet on this line for those who are interested in that. 8.5 wins, Well, first of all, this shows a ton of respect to Coach Elko and what he's done. Now, I do think that we've talked about how manageable and, you get borderline easy this schedule is. Easy is a very, interesting choice of words. Of course, this is an SEC schedule we're talking about, but I do think comparative to some other programs, this is a very easy schedule. So I think that this shows respect to Coach Elko. I do. I think that they think he's done a good job in the portal. I think they believe in his quarterbacks, in his coaching staff hires. I think they believe in everything he's doing. Otherwise, if they didn't, here's the deal. Before we do this, let's read through the other SEC teams and their win totals. Okay. Texas, 10.5. Georgia, 10.5. Ole Miss, 9.5. LSU, 9.5. Missouri, 9.5. Alabama, 9.5. Tennessee, 8.5. Texas A&M, 8.5. Auburn, 7.5. Oklahoma, 7.5. Kentucky, 6.5. Florida, 5.5. Arkansas, 5.5. South Carolina, 5.5. Mississippi State, 4.5. Vandy, 2.5. I feel bad for Vandy. But, first of all, Florida, 5.5. I will take the under on that. Thank you very much. But, I think that I just think this shows so much respect to Coach Elko and what he's done and the manageable schedule, as I said. But, listen, year 2 of Hugh Freeze at Auburn and their win total 7.5. Now, Auburn's schedule is much more difficult than Texas A&M. But that's just the one that stood out to me. You would think that a first-year coach, they would have the win total a little bit lower, even if they thought the schedule was easy. So I think that this is a healthy mix of looking at Texas A&M's schedule and, respect for Coach Elko and what he's done. But, let's talk about, so that's my 2 thoughts there is I think this shows respect to Coach Elko, and I think it shows, hey, this schedule, is really manageable for this football team. So now let's talk about the route to hit the over and the route to hit the under. So I think that, we've talked about the games that are chop them down as wins, in my opinion. And that would be McNeese, Florida. And you'll remember last year I had my list of like guaranteed wins, toss-ups, games that you don't feel good about. I'll make that because I reference that a ton. I'm going to do that later today, actually. But so easy wins. We'll go ahead and go McNeese, Bowling Green, Arkansas, at Mississippi State, at South Carolina, New Mexico State. In my opinion, those are easy football games to win. So that is 6 right there. I don't think you have any issue winning those football games. Then you bring in at Auburn, at Florida, and those are the 2 games that I think you should win. I think you should win those games, but they're tough environments to play in. I do think Texas A&M will be the better football team, in all honesty, than those 2 teams. But you have to go there and play on the road in the SEC, whether it's baseball, football, basketball, or a 50-yard dash in the front yard is harder on the road. That's just reality. So that's those 2 games. And then you've got Texas, LSU, Missouri, and Notre Dame at home. So those are those 4 games. So here's the route to the over. The route to the over is winning Auburn and Florida on the road, winning the 6 games that you're supposed to win, like I said, in the easy non-conference games, Arkansas, Mississippi State, South Carolina, those games. You got to take care of business there. In all honesty, even in the under, I think you need to take care. Even if you hit the under, you got to take care of business there. But you need to win those 6 games. So the route to the under, you got to win those 6 games, and you got to beat Auburn and Florida. So that puts you at 8 wins right there. You're at your 8. Now here's your 0.5. You've got 4 football games, all of which are going to be played at Kyle Field. All of them, all 4 of them. Texas, LSU, Missouri, Notre Dame. You go 1-4 in those football games. 1-3 in those football games. You hit your over. 9-3. Bam. Right there. You win one of those football games, you are 9-3. So, now I'll tell you, I think Texas A&M is going to hang in every one of those football games. I think they're going to win all 4 of those games? I obviously do not think that. But I will tell you this. I do think that these 3 games, 4 games, Texas, LSU, Missouri, and Notre Dame, I don't think Texas A&M loses one of those games by double digits. I don't. I think they're in every one of those games, and I do think they'll sneak one of them. I think, so that's kind of, what's funny? And the route to the under, which we're going to talk about next, I think that I still think Texas A&M wins one of those 4 games in the route to the under. So that is the route to the over. You take care of business in the 6 easy games at Auburn, at Florida to get to 8 wins, and then you win one you're not supposed to, probably, with Notre Dame, Missouri, LSU, and Texas. That is the route to hitting the over on that 8.5 number from our friends at FanDuel. The route to the under, to me, in all honesty, I think you still win those 6 games I talked about. I still think you go 1-3 in those tough games, but I think you lose either at Florida or at Auburn. Those are just, listen, when I talk about Florida, I'm not saying I think Florida is going to be the worst football team in the history of the world. That's not their problem. Their problem is their schedule. Their non-conference games are insane. Their SEC schedule is insane. They have 1 guaranteed win on their schedule. And so that's why I think that 5.5 is a crazy high number for them. On their over-under for wins. So I think that's the way, because here's Auburn's going to want that game bad. Auburn's going to need that game bad. I think Florida's going to want that game bad, because here's the deal. I think it's the one, in all honesty, super winnable game for them on their SEC schedule. Both Auburn and Florida are going to want that game and need that game against you at their place. The fans are going to be rowdy. Especially if for Florida, it's tough because it's, we're talking, that's September 14th. That's beginning of the year. People are rocking and rolling. That's going to be a tough game. I think that the tone will be set for Texas A&M season by what happens on that September 14th day. Does Texas A&M get a win down there in the swamp is going to decide everything, in all honesty, for this season. But to me, that's the route to the over and the route to the under. I think that I feel good about Texas A&M going 1-3 in those 4 tough games at Kyle Field. Can they go 2-0 at Auburn, at Florida? To me, that will be the difference. If they go 2-0 in those games, I think that they will hit the over on this 8.5 win line. We're going to preview this Vandy game, talk about where Texas A&M is in the KenPom rankings and the net rankings, and have all of those discussions coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. But first, I want to tell you about our wonderful friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. So let's preview this Texas A&M Vandy game. Talked about it a little bit yesterday when breaking down the game. Texas A&M's huge win over Tennessee. But, of course, I want to just flat out break down this game against Vandy. So the first thing that needs to be discussed is this is a very, very, very bad Vandy team. They are 6-17 on the season. They are 1-9 in SEC play. On the season, they are averaging 66 points per game, 34.9 rebounds, 9.6 assists. Wow. 6 steals, 3 blocks, 10 turnovers. They're shooting 39.4% from the field and a whopping 28.4% from beyond the three-point line. Yeah, that is really, really bad. I don't know how else to break that down in a positive way. That is really bad. So, before we get more into Vandy, I want to run through Texas A&M's numbers. So, Texas A&M is currently 37th in the net rankings. They're 5-4 in quad one games, which is a big deal. Big deal. Texas, if you're over 500 in quad one games and you've played, 9 thus far, I'm sure I'll have to double check that. We'll double check that before the upcoming game on Saturday and break all that down. But that is, that's pretty good. That's going to help when it comes to seeding and seed lines and all that. The committee loves a good record in quad one games. Texas A&M is 39th in KenPom. They're 40th in adjusted offense and 42nd in adjusted defense. So the metrics don't have a problem with Texas A&M, which is a good thing. And the spread for this Vandy game is 9.5 points in favor of Texas A&M. When you go on the road in the SEC and you're a 9.5 point favorite and you're not like, the number one team, it's pretty crazy. That's how bad Vandy is. So, we've talked about the numbers for Vandy. They are very, very bad. What you have to do is just go and take care of business. In Nashville, it's a game on the road. The only thing that I can really, it's a weird arena, weird atmosphere. There's not really many people. It's a weird place to play. benches are underneath the baskets, which is it's just a weird place. Go and play your game. Get your offensive rebounds, get your second chance opportunities, clean up the glass, slow down the game. Boots, need a good game from Boots and from Wade. You got to get to the rim, score easy baskets, easy looks. Don't rely on threes in this game because, listen, you don't need them. Just score the easy baskets. Any points in this game are going to lead to a win. And make your free throws. If you get to the free throw line, let's sink them in this game. But I mean, that's a score down low. I think that's really the reality here. Keep doing what you're doing. Get second chance opportunities. And just make another statement. Blow this team out. Don't make this a game where you go on the road and win by 4 points in a scary game. Go beat this team by 18, 20, 25 points. That's how bad they are. I mean, they're losing by that many points at home. So, go beat the crap out of this team. You need this one. I mean, Texas A&M still, you have a trip to Alabama coming up on Saturday, host Arkansas, trip to Knoxville, host South Carolina, a trip to Athens, host Mississippi State, trip to Oxford. I mean, this is not an easy schedule remaining for Texas A&M. So this is one of your free wins, and you have got to collect it, to get to 7 wins. I mean, here's the deal. If you can get 10 SEC wins, if you can go 10-8, I think that 9-9, you'll sneak into the tournament, I think. But if you can get to 10 wins, I think you're in business, which makes this game so important. I think you can win so that means, if you get this one, you need 3 more wins. I think you can beat Mississippi State at home. I think you can beat Georgia on the road. I think you can beat Mississippi State on the road, in all honesty. I think you can beat Arkansas at home. I think you can beat South Carolina at home. I'm not quite sold on South Carolina yet. If they beat Auburn this week, I'll be more sold on them. But, I mean, you've got more winnable games. So if you can get to 10 wins, you're in a good spot, a good spot. So it starts with this. You got to beat Vandy to get to 7. I think then you got to beat Arkansas to get to 8. I think that you then need to go 2-3 and then in the last 3 games at Georgia, Mississippi State at home, at Ole Miss to get your 10 wins. But you could get 11. I mean, really, so there are still wins on the table for this team that is playing really good basketball right now. So we'll break down whatever happens in this game throughout the week, and we will also preview the Alabama game later in the week. But that is going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Aggies. Thank you so much for tuning in, being here every single day. Really, really do appreciate it. Hope everybody has a great rest of your day today. We have a lot of fun stuff to talk about throughout the week, and we'll talk about the swing games on the schedule. We're going to talk about baseball. There's a lot of fun stuff to break down this week, so stick around for all of that. Everybody have a great rest of your day today, and we will see you tomorrow.